Hey friends, ever wonder how successful people make it seem to look so easy? Well, I'm here to tell you it's not. Today we're going to dive into how successful people get where they are. And I'm going to share some of the tips and tricks that I found worked for me in my own personal life. There are 5 common denominators in what I have found through my research successful people do. And I can attest to this because I utilized every one of these as I built my businesses. So let's get into it. First, we're going to talk about mindfulness. Second, we're going to talk about goals. Third, setting up financial freedom. Fourth, how to get the most sleep. And fifth, communication. So one thing I find that successful people have that many of us don't is an excellent communication skill set. Well, what is an excellent communication skill set? Well, let's talk about how we listen to people. Are you an active listener or a passive listener? This is really important because you gain so much more knowledge listening to people than just running our gums, which is what most of us want to do. And especially if we're not bringing any value to the table, we're just gossiping or chit-chatting around the water cooler. Most successful people are active listeners. They're listening with an intent to understand, and then they think through how they want to respond. Whereas many of us are just kind of passively listening, waiting to jump in and give our thoughts. So number 1 is listening and communication. Become an active listener. Slow down, pay attention to what that person's saying, and try to add value to their lives with your responses. Make sure that when you are responding, it is in a way that adds value to the conversation. This also holds true when you're communicating with others and leading the conversation. An example would be, when you interact with people, whether it be personal or professional, are you thinking about how you can add value to someone else's life? Are you thinking about how you can contribute to the conversation? Are you educating yourself so that when you engage with people, maybe at a higher level, at a level that you aspire to be at, you're able to add to that conversation and give some insights or thoughts as to something maybe perhaps that they hadn't thought of? An example might be something that's trending. It could be interest rates, for example, and what's going on in the real estate market. Next time you go to a dinner party or a get-together or you're playing games with your friends over at a house, make sure that you're bringing something to the table that makes sense, that can maybe enrich someone's life. Talk to them about how they can save in a better way, how they can get the best interest rate, or maybe perhaps how to navigate these crazy political waters and not get all caught up in the drama. In other words, stop watching TV. Just make sure that when you're communicating with people that you're becoming an active listener, or that you're learning how to be an active listener, and that when you're engaging with them and you're responding, that you're bringing something positive to the table that they can take away and enrich their lives. Next, I want to talk about sleep. This is really important, and many of us don't get enough sleep. Are you getting enough REM sleep? Are you getting enough deep sleep? Dig into learning a little bit more about these, and it's not like you can really technically control whether you have more REM or deep sleep or, say, typical regular sleep, or even restlessness, the amount of time that you're up in the middle of the night. But I would encourage you to maybe get a smartwatch. Smartwatches are great for tracking your sleep. So if you had a really good night's sleep, you wake up rested, you're not yawning literally half an hour after you wake up, you can look at your watch or whatever monitor you use, and you can tell, okay, maybe I got an hour deep sleep, I got an hour and a half of REM sleep. Many of these sleep modes are modes where you're actually dreaming and your mind is resting. It's at its best. Your cells are recovering. And when you get up, you're going to be refreshed and ready to go. There's also batteries that are in these phones. They call them body batteries. So you can tell how many hours of rest you need before you actually work out again. And many of these things can help you to track how your body is ready, and really technically your immune system as well. If you're constantly working out and you're not resting your body or getting enough sleep, you'll tend to get sick more often, and especially if you're not feeding your body the right food. So it's important that you get enough sleep. And the way that you do that is you build habits that you don't change. For example, instead of watching TV until 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, get into bed, especially in the wintertime when it's dark, get into bed at 9 o'clock or 9:30 and make sure that you don't get up until at least 6 o'clock, let's say, right? I find for me that I'm most productive in the morning. So I like to go to bed about 9:30 and I get up about 5:30, plenty of sleep. And I found when I started going to bed earlier, it was easier for me to sleep, especially when the clocks change. It kind of throws me off. And when the sun starts coming up at 5:30 in the morning, I'm automatically up. So if I'm already getting up at 5:30, the clock change doesn't really throw me off that much. So prioritize your sleep. This is when your body refreshes and regenerates cells, and it can make your mind sharper. It can make you stronger. and definitely make you feel better and be more productive. So you want to set a clock and you want to stick to that clock. Sleep is really important. I would encourage people to strive to get at least 7 hours sleep. 7.5 is better, but try not to get any less than 7 hours of sleep, and you'll probably perform at your peak. Now let's talk about finances. Not enough people focus on their finances. You know, the average American has less than $150,000 in their retirement after working probably 40 plus years. And the average American also has less than $500 in their savings account. That is absolutely insane. That is less than one emergency away from catastrophic failure. This is a really important way getting your finances in order. So let's talk about it. What can you do? Well, a couple things you can do is if you have a checking account, whether you're not using a physical checkbook or you're using your checking account, let's say a digital version, maybe an app in your phone. What I used to do is I would write checks for a little bit over what the cost was, or if I had a $1.69 charge, I would round it to $2 and I would deduct that out of my account. Or let's say you're not using a checking account, I would look at my checking account and I would assume that, we'll just use a number, $500 just didn't exist. So if my checking account said I had $2,500, I would assume $500 just didn't exist. So that was kind of like a safety net at the bottom of my account. And over time, as I ran transactions, say $1.79, I rounded up to $2, $3.40, I rounded up to $4. It started adding up more and more and more. So eventually I would end up, instead of having $500 extra dollars in my checking account, I would end up with, $2,000 extra in my checking account. And it kept adding up. And then what I would do is I would take half of that money and I would put it either into the stock market or I would put it into an emergency fund that was in a checking account that I couldn't control. At the time, I had checkbooks, and I didn't have a checkbook for that account. So when I put the money in there, there was no easy way for me to take it out. So it was kind of out of sight, out of mind. And eventually, I built up several savings accounts. One was for my animals in case they had an emergency. One was for a vacation fund. One was my emergency savings account. And the other one was my primary checking account that I ran my finances with. And I never went negative in my accounts as a result. I know this is hard because you'll see the money in those places and you'll have a tendency to want to buy things you definitely don't need. But I would encourage you to do that. You have to set up automations so that you will be reminded not to touch that money. And automations will take that money away and do what we call paying yourself first. That way you're not out spending all your money and then you look at your checking account and you're negative or you have no funds. So adjust your finances so that money isn't there, or have your employer take extra money out. You can do that as well. And then just have them automatically invest it somewhere like the stock market, 401k, whatever it may be. And then it's untouchable. Of course, you can't touch it until you're in your 60s usually. So set up automations in your finances. And then, of course, live below your means. There are many things that you don't need. Most of the things are things that you want. So it's very important to prioritize what your wants and needs are. And I encourage people to take their time to think about things before they buy them. Oftentimes, if I'm curious about something, I want to look at a car or an RV or something crazy or a boat. I just look at it online over and over again for like a month. And then after a month, I don't want to buy it because it's boring. And I realize that a satisfied need no longer motivates, like Stephen Covey used to say. Once you own it, it's not exciting anymore. So for me, just researching and looking at things actually helps me to decide not to buy them. Today, I don't have any toys. I always look at those things as a drain to my finances. They are not assets that generally appreciate like real estate. So I don't buy them. And for me, I have to take a little time to look at things to get bored with them for me to not want to buy them. So that could be a trick for you as well. Tell yourself, I will not buy anything until I've researched it for 2 weeks, let's say, anything relevant over several $100s. And I can almost guarantee you over time, you will get tired of that thing and you probably won't buy it. So automations and bore yourself to death on something so that you don't buy it as an impulse and waste all your money and putting you in a position where you can't save now. Okay, mindset. This is so important. Most people that are successful have some sort of mindfulness practice, whether they're meditating or going to a quiet place. For me, mine is going to the gym, believe it or not. When I go to the gym, that's my time. So I focus really early in the morning on taking care of my emails, knocking out things. And then I'm at the gym for about an hour and a half to 2 hours doing cardio, doing weights. That's where I get to soak up all my audiobooks. I get to research YouTube videos. I can take time to think through problems. I can put notes in my phone. It's kind of my time. And so that's sort of my meditative state. Even though I'm very active, it's my way to clear my mind. I shut the phone actually off so I don't get emails and notifications and things like that. It's my time to research, gain knowledge, and put notes in for writing books and things of that sort. And I found that was a way for me to knock out two birds with one stone. I'm being active, I'm working out, and I'm also generating a lot of mental strength because I'm educating myself. I think there was a point in 4 to 5 months I read over 70 books. Many were audiobooks, but that is a ton of content. Could have never done it had I not prioritized my health, going to the gym, and then doubling up with educating myself constantly while I was at the gym. So instead of just listening to music, I'm constantly absorbing podcasts and audiobooks. So I would encourage you to try to do that as well. If you drive for a living or you spend a lot of time behind the windshield, put those audiobooks on. Don't just listen to music or news, educate yourself. You could learn a second language. You could start a side gig. There's so many things you could do. That mindfulness is really important. And if it's just 15 minutes in the morning, meditating or stretching or relaxing in a quiet room, that's fine as well, but you have to focus on getting your mind right. And I encourage you to do that in the morning if possible to start your day off. And last, I want to talk about SMART goals. So what is a SMART goal? Well, oftentimes we set audacious goals, especially after the new year. Oh, I want to lose 30 pounds. I want to have a six-pack abs. I want to be rich. I want to start a business, whatever. Those are long stretch goals, right? Those things are hard to achieve. And oftentimes after 30, 60, 90 days, we fall off because our bad habits take over. And then we feel like we failed, and here comes New Year's again, and we do the same thing over and over and over again. There's some astronomical statistics online about how many people fail at their New Year's resolutions. So I encourage folks to pick small goals that are attainable, right? Like I'll give you an example. I was not a runner, but I was training for an academy. In order to get in there, I had to hit a certain time. I was not a runner though. And there was 50 people competing with me at that time. I had no goal of being number one. I had a goal of being faster and faster and faster in the 1.5 miles that I had to run. Now remember, I'm not a runner. So I started out running 1.5 miles at like 14.5 minutes. And by the time I trained for a few months, I ran that 1.5 miles in 10 minutes and 29 seconds. That's pretty significant, probably a 30% increase in my speed. And I took number 2 out of 50 people. How did I get there? I wasn't a runner. Well, I got up every day. I started running, 10 minutes a day. Then I started running 30 minutes a day. And then I started running faster, and then I started doing sprints, and I made sure I was stretching, and I was getting my rest, and I was eating right, and things of that sort. I had people push me. I would run with other people that were faster. Again, never had a goal of being number one, but by pushing myself incrementally every day, setting those short goals, I reached my stretch goal. I took number 2 and I made it in, no problem. I blew it up. I think there was 15 people accepted out of my class and I was number 2, so I was easily in. But had I set a goal of being the fastest runner or trying to run a 6-minute mile or something like that, I may have never got there because it was such an audacious goal. I would have probably defeated myself in my own mind and then fallen back to my old habits, just thinking, oh, I'm not going to do it. I'm never going to get there. And this is a problem a lot of us have. If we fall off the wagon and we fail one day, or we focus too much on this audacious goal that we'll probably never reach, we never get there. So I encourage you daily, if possible, to have a few goals, little things. Maybe I want to do a YouTube video, so I'm going to do a 60-second YouTube video, not a 20-minute YouTube video, and then you're going to work your way up, right? I want to save $500, not I want to be a millionaire. I want to save $500. Once you save $500, then you can invest that money and go save another $500. And if you save another $500 and now you want to save $5,000, well, you might have to start a second gig, right? So you have a full-time job and you start a side gig. Because now that side gig is extra money beyond the normal money you're living on, and that money is just going to go into your investments, right? So, when you normally bump your income up, you just spend to your income. So you go from 50, 60, 70,000 up, you start buying nicer cars, you start buying more houses, things of that sort. Whereas with side gigs, you just use them as though they are your retirement gigs, right? So that's a good way as well to set small goals that are achievable, that will build your confidence that they can roll into and turn into stretch goals. All right, so we talked about communication, we talked about sleep, finances, setting goals. We talked about mindset. So what do you think? Are these some of the things you're going to put into practice in your life so that you can achieve audacious goals? You see somebody out there that's successful and you want to catch them, you want to exceed them? Well, those are the first steps in catching or exceeding some of these people around you. A lot of us look at these movie stars or wealthy people and think, oh, I could never do that. But that's the problem. We're looking at them and we're dictating success based on their success, based on their dreams. You can achieve any level of success, but it's got to be your level of success. And I can promise you this, if you focus on your level of success and use those small goals to turn into snowballs that will roll into those stretch goals, you'll achieve it. You just have to start and you have to build good habits. Okay, so don't forget to subscribe, and share with your friends. If you want to learn more about training, buying and selling the products we love, check out the next video.